And we're going to go live on Facebook.
Hello, I'm Claire Snowden-Darling.
I'm Laura Knowles.
And we are the creators, founders. I never know what to say, really. We basically are the founders of Balanced Wellness and the College of Functional Wellness and the creators of Functional Kinesiology, the Functional Wellness Training Course and Holding Space Practitioner Training Course. It's becoming a bit of a ridiculous list.
Well, it is, isn't it? But what a marvellous list.
We've been busy. We've been really busy. We wanted to jump on a live and have a conversation pretty much because we have been quiet about quite a lot of issues. And we have been quiet on purpose. And we're going to talk you through why. And it was time, with everything that is going on globally, for us to start to bring awareness to why we've been quiet and actually what we want to say.
It's a biggie, actually.
It is a biggie. It is a biggie. And we're going to talk about a variety of things. We're going to talk about the V word, the vaccine word.
I'm going to talk about the C word.
We're going to talk about the C word. And we are also going to be talking about how to make decisions. I mean, like, why in 2021 are we having to sit here and say the V word, the C word? Why are we being censored just for bringing debate? So my main driver, and one of the main drivers in our business, is around seeking truth. That is absolutely, like, I can't stop until I've like dug down to find the truth of a situation. And this is how our work's been developed. And it's basically how we, create our coaching is around supporting people to find truth. And when we live in a time of censorship, it is not possible to find truth. You have to dig so hard. And then everyone who's looking for that basically becomes considered a conspiracy theorist.
It's not just the being silenced. I think that there's a real issue with media pressure and media messages that have an agenda that makes it very difficult for us to be able to make decisions based on our health. And I think a big driver for me, we've been contacted by a number of students and a number of clients asking questions about the V word and the C word. And what I want to do in this live is talk about our position, what our recommendations are, why we make the recommendations we do, and our approach to the health crisis that we are experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really want you to have some practical tips to take away. This isn't just for us to have a bit of a rant. It is for you to have some
little bit ranting with some education.
Pretty much every live we've ever done, isn't it? Bit of a rant, have some education. It's pretty much our experience of health anyway.
Of the world.
Yeah, that's true. So where do we want to start? So I actually think I want to start with, where do we want to start? Here's where we're going to start, with our position that we have had to date. So we are in a challenging position as not only health practitioners, but health educators. in that people constantly come and ask us for our advice on things like vaccines. And I'm not just talking about this vaccine. People ask us about a lot of vaccines. They'll ask us about vaccines for traveling. They'll ask us about vaccines for their children. People ask about vaccines because they can often have, you know, I know there was a lot of, and continues to be quite a lot of hoo-ha around things like MMR. People are concerned often, and they are looking for advice. What we don't give, and what we haven't given at any point during the pandemic, or when a client comes to us and asks about any other kind of vaccine, is our advice or our opinion. Because my advice is not important for somebody else. My opinion is not important for someone else. What is important, and this is where we're actually going to be steering this conversation to, is helping someone to find what is the truth for them. Now, the difficulty in a time of censorship, and with the amount of fear that is the narrative that is put in the media around that creates fear and is ultimately propaganda pushing for a result, an objective, means that it is very hard to autonomously find our path and our truth to make a decision for our own health. And that is where we come in as educators, as clinicians. I'm just going to say right from the outset, and I think this is a really important thing, we are not anti-vaxxers at all. We are not anti-vaccines.
I really like the terminology, a medical freedom advocate. That is where we stand. It is about getting the education that is, and applying that education, that health knowledge to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm trying to find live so I can see any comments and I can answer them as we go through. And it's doing that thing when my iPad just plays what we're saying, which is really not helpful. So yeah, I really like that too, because it is that, and that's the bit that's missing. And I get really cross about the fact that we're in this very binary perspective right now. You're either vaccinated or you're an anti-vaxxer. Mm-hmm. There is so many shades of different shades in there. That is not true. And we can share our experiences of, you know, where we're at. I personally, waiting for the hate mail, am unvaccinated against COVID because I had COVID in January. I truly believe in my antibodies, and also I'm really believing in my antibodies after accidentally spending a few days with Laura as she was on the cusp of coming down with COVID before she realised we were locked in a room. Don't worry, we didn't go anywhere. And obviously then I took all the full precautions that you're supposed to take afterwards. And guess what? My antibodies are holding up. My lateral flow test never came up as positive. I did not experience any symptoms. So my antibodies are proving themselves at this stage to be valid and viable. That's 10 months after having had COVID. Now, my mum had COVID at the same time as me, and she is actually doing antibody tests. And when her antibodies run out, she will consider having the vaccine. She doesn't want to at the moment because a lot of people are getting quite unwell when they have the vaccine, have the illness, and then have the vaccine on top of it. And she's just very nervous. So she just wants to wait for her antibodies to die down before she has the vaccine, which I think is a very responsible way of looking at it. And her tests keep coming back with the same response that she was having in just after she had COVID. So her antibodies are still holding. There is so much that we know about how the immune system works. And I feel that one of the things that's being silenced is natural immunity. Antibodies are being told that natural antibodies don't work. This goes against everything that we know about the immune system. There are people on the planet that still have full immunity to SARS 17 years after SARS happened. In fact, there is evidence of people still having antibodies against Spanish flu 90 years after it happened. And what we actually know the immune system is if you don't have a full antibody response, which requires your T cells, actually your B cells hold memory of it, which means that if you come in contact with it, it activates the immune system, and you would probably end up with a much more watered down version. So like a cold. In fact, there is a lot of arguments that because colds are coronaviruses, they're flus that have been watered down and watered down and watered down and watered down. So we have got ourselves into such a confused state around all of this that we are not talking about natural immunity. So I have personally made the decision not to be vaccinated for a variety of reasons, one of which is natural immunity. It does not mean I'm an anti-vaxxer. And I just want to state this because my daughter had to go to the doctors the other day. She's just doing an animal management course and needed a tetanus jab. An anti-vaxxer would be like, you're not going anywhere near me or my family with vaccines. Of course, I am going to frog march my daughter down to the doctor's office and hold her hand while she has a tetanus shot because she's clearing out cages of exotic animals. I'm not going to have her exposed to tetanus. So this binary language makes it very, very divisive and adds so much pressure and fear-based strategy to people's thought processes, because we are literally seeing people in divided families. This is like the Civil War. This is like Brexit. This is like the Trump versus Biden. It's like this. What's happening at a time where we need to be pulling together is we are just making it who's right. I'm right, you're wrong.
What I really like about what you said is the self-responsibility piece. So from my own perspective, going into the pandemic, is that me?
No, yeah, carry on. I've sorted it out now.
Is that I wanted to be really self-responsible with my health. So from my perspective, what I did was I did the research of someone of my gender, my age, my health, and looking at the stats of if I was to catch COVID unvaccinated, what were the risks? And then I made an adult decision about whether I was prepared to face those risks or not. I also looked at the vaccination story. So my background is autoimmune profile. So I am always interested in how my immune system could potentially respond to a infection or a vaccine. So I did that research for myself. I did it for my family. I did it for my son. And I made the decision not to be vaccinated. And then on the 1st of September, I came into contact with someone with COVID. Interestingly, they had been double vaccinated. And because the messages from the media had said that snot, for example, was not a COVID-19 symptom, they believed that they did not have COVID-19 and went about their day. And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about when I see it in the media is, again, this divisive, the unvaccinated are spreading COVID-19, the vaccinated are protecting us. And I think that is very black and white, because from my experience, I got COVID-19 from a double vaccinated person. I then, who
was more unwell than you?
Yeah. And I mean that.
And there are reasons for that. They were older, different hormone profile. There were possible reasons for that. So, that's not conclusive evidence.
Coming back into that self-responsibility model. So as soon as I knew that I had been exposed to COVID-19, I did lateral flow tests and I self-isolated. I was away from my family. I was away from my son for 10 days. I became unwell. There was an interesting emotional journey for me to be self-isolated, to be so busy and to be a working mother and then suddenly living out of a camper van, because I made the decision that I wanted to protect others. I think that is the self-responsibility. So I think it's a really interesting situation that I was in, as an unvaccinated person. Yes, I came into COVID. Yes, I contracted COVID, but I didn't pass it on. And I kept others safe by making those decisions to keep myself. So I'm really interested in that story that comes through in the media, that is the unvaccinated that are putting others at risk. And
yes, that's a really, really interesting narrative, isn't it? Because Yeah, you didn't. You were unvaccinated. A vaccinated person ended up putting, well, two people or three people caught it from them. So, and they're not irresponsible people, but again, they were following the guidance that had been, in the news. You're right. They shouldn't have been really snotty. It was presenting like a cold. It wasn't a cold. So we're not blaming them.
I got really snotty.
Yeah. I didn't have any of the symptoms until I lost my sense of smell. I had none of the symptoms that were associated. I didn't have a temperature for the whole 2 weeks, not once. I felt like I'd been kicked in the back. That was my worst symptom. And then that passed, and then I lost my sense of smell. And that's where I was like, oh, right, okay. I'd already had a PCR test by that point. I was like, okay, this is, well, yeah, hello, this is obviously COVID. And then I got the migraines. And that was my experience of COVID. So it is really challenging, because I mean, we've had some lovely comments here, which was we hear a lot of people saying they really regret having had theirs. I've also had people saying, I'm so pleased I've had it. It's a weight off my mind. When my children have had it, I'll be so relieved, because then I can just feel like, and this is one of the things. We are not anti people having the vaccine. There is no binary, us, but we're right, you're wrong. That this is not where this is coming from at all. And this is actually one of the big key messages we want to take away here is, can we just come from a place where we're less divisive, where we're actually being in a place of tolerance and non-discrimination and lack of fear? Because that's the key. We only start judging people when we are scared. And so when we can come from a place of less fear, then we can have some tolerance, some understanding, and decide what is right for us. So it might be that you go, okay, well, I know you're unvaccinated, so I choose to wear a mask around you. I choose not to let you in my home. I choose these things for me and for my safety, as opposed to, I'm going to blame you, I'm going to heap loads of stuff on you. Or I also hear it from the unvaccinated people. The people saying, I don't want to go any near vaccinated people because of shedding, because of this, because of that, and it's like, okay, wow, we are just in a place where we are making it this divisive. It's me or you that's right, as opposed to everyone has an opportunity to make a decision here, and we have an opportunity to support each other in their decisions, and then choose boundaries that are right for us and take some self-responsibility. So we've had a comment.
Do you want to go for the comment?
Yeah, go on, finish your sentence.
What I think is important here is that, like you said, we cannot give, and we will not give, our opinions, our personal opinions about vaccines. But where I do think we can add to the debate is about looking after our health. What I'm always really interested in the media is when messages come through that it's the underlying health conditions, such as smoking, such as obesity, that when we start sedentary lifestyles, when we start low vitamin D, when we look at these issues of people who have this and then they experience COVID, there is a higher risk of hospitalization. This is where we can add to the debate, because whatever your choice is, whether you decide to be vaccinated or unvaccinated, where we can support is by creating the best health possible for you to be able to go into the decision that you are making, so that whatever your immune system is going to deal with, it is in the best possible place.
Yes, exactly. I think, you're either going to go into COVID in the best possible place, or you're going to go into the vaccine in the best possible place. And I know, same as you, our clinics have been full of people with fallout from the vaccines. Our clinic has also had a lot of people who are struggling to get over COVID. So I'm not going to use the word long COVID, because that is an absolute bullshit phrase. I'm going to call it by what it is actually, which is either ME or fibromyalgia. It's like people have got ME or fibromyalgia, which is post-viral fatigue or post-viral syndrome on the back of COVID. This is another slight soapbox rant. I'll only take a moment, because we have had in our clinics people with post-viral syndrome, or since I started, since 15 years ago. I personally had post-trauma syndrome, and it's the same wolf in a different disguise, and it left me with chronic fatigue for 15 years. When you start calling something long COVID, or what have they decided to call it now? All people also get long flu. Like, no shit, Sherlock. That's been in my clinic for 15 years. But they can't call it that, because ME and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue are basically joke diagnosis that doctors give as like a code word to other doctors of this person's a pain and there's nothing wrong with them. Like I've heard that from a doctor's mouth. I'm just going to put a hand up and say it's a generalization, and there are a lot of doctors who do take it very seriously. And if you are one of those doctors, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it was an incredibly challenging thing to go through. It's not called long COVID, it is post-viral syndrome. And there is a lot of ways to deal with it, but the NHS don't have those ways available to them. So this is one of the things that we really like to crack open, is that there are things the NHS are fantastic at. The emergency, the crisis work that the NHS do is like hats off, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But chronic conditions that are at that point no longer life-threatening, not so great. They really, they understand that it might be to do with diet and lifestyle, but they haven't done the training. They don't have people in there doing the training to be able to teach that. And even the people who have done the training, it doesn't come under the NIC regulations for them to be able to offer that information. So there's a lot of doctors who are actually functional medically trained, which is more stepping into our world, but they're not allowed to talk about that under the NIC regulations. So their hands are tied around what they can and cannot talk about. So what we have to do, and this is something that came up when you were just speaking then about this self-responsibility, is start to realize that there is no one person with a source of information, be that the government, be that the NHS, be that, you know, your doctor, be that anybody. There is no one person who has a source of information that can be the right information for every single person. And the big thing that we promote in our work is about educating yourself and then being empowered through your own autonomy to be able to make a decision without fear. So one of the things that someone said here is, I regret getting my vaccine. And we do hear that quite a lot. So we've had clients with fallout, and we're going to talk a bit about that in a moment, aren't we? Because it is not being flagged. It is not being flagged. There's a variety of reasons it's not being flagged. Periods have been longer and heavier, now knowing I can transfer this whether I've had it or not, so I wish I hadn't had it. Because that is a question. I was like, why are we bothering when people are still getting it and passing it on? Because that's not my experience of people with, you know, who have other vaccines like polio. That's not my experience of having, you have something like a polio vaccine or smallpox vaccine, people weren't transmitting it. So what's going on? And this is the thing for me, this is actually where my truth seeker gets a little bit excited, is I go, why can't we ask the questions? There's all these questions. I just want to ask the questions, but we're not allowed to ask the questions because of censorship.
Because we get labelled anti-vaxxers.
What's going on? Why are people still getting it? Why are they getting unwell?
There's a couple of things that I wanted to answer from that message. I think the period thing is really interesting. We have seen this in the clinic. I'm really, I'm pleased to see that it is being reported. There were over 30,000 women who reported adverse period reactions after the vaccine, and I think this is so important. So if you, this is something else that we recommend, if you have an adverse...
Is that in the UK? Is that in the UK?
UK.
Just the UK.
It's the UK, and that is just the women who have reported it. I mean, I dread to think how many women actually did have. There was so much. What I really saw in my clinic is women having period issues and going, I don't know where this has come from. And me triggering the question, when was your, did you have the COVID vaccine? Oh yeah, no, I did. And being able to make those connections is not something that I saw was particularly common. So another recommendation that we make, if you notice an adverse reaction from the COVID-19 vaccine, please, please, please report it. There is something called the yellow card.
Okay, go on.
You can Google yellow card COVID-19, and it is a government website that is set up to document the adverse reactions from the COVID-19 vaccine. And we really want this information out there. This is so important for moving forward in the future. And this is what I also wanted to speak to with the regret, is yes, if you have the vaccine and you regret it, there's a whole learning piece there that happens, rather than beating yourself up about it, because we go through life and we have experiences, And it is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for learning. This is absolutely what we teach in our emotional work, is okay, how, looking at the whole situation, why did I have that COVID vaccine? Was it because I felt coerced? Was it because I felt pressured? Where did I get the pressure from? Am I able to take the learning from that situation and apply that to the future? Where are the trip hazards for me? When is it that I'm feeling particularly fearful, anxious, or I feel like I can be convinced into something? And what do I need to put in place to be able to not let that happen to me again in the future, so that I can make a decision from an empowered place and not from a fearful place?
Yes, that's such a key thing. I think I just want to pick up on what I was going to say, but I love that. Well done about the yellow card. Didn't know that at all.
Honestly, research.
It's a lot of people don't make the connection. So I've had quite a few clients with massive autoimmune flare-ups, and maybe their last vaccine had been a month, but they had a sort of bit of a flare-up after the first one, or after the first one and the second one, and it was like, okay, I just didn't make the connection. But you hadn't had that for a year, or you haven't had that symptom, or that hasn't been like that. And what is really interesting is when you find out which jab they had and then what their symptoms are. So I know that you and I both know people that have ended up with clots in their heart, out of the blue. Like these, I know the person that I know had absolutely no underlying heart disease, had never had a blip like this whatsoever, and then suddenly 6 clots in their heart, heart attack, needing surgery, stents, all of those things. And they happen to have the vaccine that has been reported, I'm not spreading this, that has been reported as causing blood clots. Or, it's actually very common that women who are having the heavy bleeding, it's the same jab that they're having. We need to get this information out there. Now, the problem is the person I know who had the blood clots had not made the connection, and the doctors didn't even ask them. Now, I have heard from a doctor, and this is just one source, that the paperwork that they have to fill out if they suspect it's a yellow card situation is so high that it's just not even on their radar, because it's just, there isn't time, and because they aren't sure, because it's not like here's the checklist of side effects that we know are going to happen, because this is a new vaccine. We don't know what's going to happen. So it could be anything. And it's only now that we're starting to see it play out on a grand scale that we're seeing this pattern: clots in the heart, myocarditis, heavy bleeding for women. So it is very autoimmune flare-ups, just these things. But because, someone had autoimmune disease, they might not connect it to, I'm just having a flare-up. Why are you having a flare-up? Oh, it was exactly this amount of time after that first one and exactly this amount of time after the second one. Right, okay, there we go. And you don't have to live with that. If you're having flare-ups, you can go and work with a health practitioner who can support you to, remove that crisis from your body. So this is why we're not anti-vaccine, because we're saying if you're having a vaccine, go into it with your body prepared. And if you have fallout, then, we'll work with you to try and boost your body back to where it was before.
Exactly. So the piece of advice, recommendations that we can give, so we talk about this preparing your body. What do we mean by that?
Oh, what do we mean? Sorry, I was just reading a comment, which was the message that has been delivered is that the unvaccinated are more likely than the vaccinated to pass it on and be hospitalized or die. Yeah, I mean, that's really curious, isn't it? Because a lot of the unvaccinated people now tend to be in the low risk category. And then also what they're classing as unvaccinated is where the data becomes really skewed, because they're now saying if you've had one vaccine but not 2, you're unvaccinated. And also if someone needs the booster and hasn't had the booster, they're now unvaccinated. So we're just in this place where it's like, well, what are we expecting people to have a booster every 6 months? Not being funny, but 10 months in and my antibodies are still holding me strong. So what are we trying to, I don't understand. I genuinely am it's just also confusing. And someone else, it's the same person, as a self-employed fitness instructor, I've been told if I'm not vaccinated, I cannot work in certain venues. This is the thing. Yeah, it's divisive, and we haven't seen this level of discrimination since segregation, since, you know, what happened in Second World War, that in the lead up to Second World War, we haven't seen discrimination on this level since those times, and yet here we are, absolutely in it. So what do we mean? Sorry, I was just reading another comment. Yeah. So someone else who's had both the vaccines, their vaccine passport runs out on October the 21st, 2021. And so you've got to go again. 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 I
think that was part of my decision-making process about, this was my own personal choice, is the repeated boosters, that it just didn't feel right for me.
No, and I'm just, and also one of the other reasons that I chose not to have the vaccines, I don't have flu vaccines. I don't have flu vaccines because I've had flu a couple of times in my life, and I mean like proper flu where you put a grand down on the table and say, go on then, get yourself to work, and you go, yeah, no, keep the grand, I can't get out of bed. A couple of times in my life. So and again, flu, normal flu. And this is the other thing, is we've learned to play down flu. We play down a lot of things. So when people come into my clinic, so I've got a migraine, I go, you're wearing perfume, you drove here, it's a sunny day, and you went to the shops before you came here. You don't have a migraine. You might have a bad headache. You haven't got a migraine, because if you've got a proper migraine, you are lying in bed in a dark room trying not to vomit, or, you know, whatever your experiences are. So people say, oh, I've got a bit of flu. No, we don't get a bit of flu. We have a cold, a really bad cold, or we have flu. There's like, no. This has just reminded us what real flu is. And I have a friend whose brother sadly passed away 4 years ago, 2018, I think, 2018. A few years ago now, at the age of 33 with no underlying health conditions from normal flu. It happens. This is the human experience. It happens. But we have absolutely turned this into a reign of fear and propaganda and absolute terror. And so now when you look at the narrative in the news, it's all about the secondary school kids that are spreading COVID. And because this is the narrative now, is we want to, it's always been, if you go back over the narrative really objectively, it's the people in their 50s who are now spreading it. Oh, but who's next up to be vaccinated? People in their 50s. Now it's the people in their 40s, but who's up next to be vaccinated? The people in their 40s. That's how it's gone the whole way. And so now what we're doing is, today it was this promoting how it's secondary school kids, who, by the way, have a very more likely to be hit by lightning than actually have serious effects from COVID. But that's because we're trying to push the vaccines on school-age children. That's when we are able to look without fear, but general curiosity and autonomy, we start to see a narrative that we're being forced into and where we're being cattle herded. So going back to your question, what do we mean by preparing ourselves?
What really helped me make my decision, and also when I contracted COVID-19 in September, was to feel empowered that I would be able to look after my health so that I could go through the experience. And that was really empowering for me. And something that we really know from the immune system is there is this very much this neuroimmune connection, that how we feel from a stress response, from an emotional response, absolutely has a knock-on effect with our immune system. So when we are going into an immune experience, if we are able to feel confident with the decisions that we are making, or we're able to feel relaxed from it, we have a better chance of being able to deal with it. And so I felt very empowered that I would be able to manage my health. And I had 2 pretty rough days where I did have the temperature and I really didn't feel very well, and I sat in my camper van and just looked after myself. I had my zinc and drank my water, and then it did turn into a cold for me. That was pretty, and then I lost my taste. So that was my COVID experience. But yeah, what do we mean by looking after our health?
So we mean eating right. And this was we kept banging this drum in our lives during the pandemic, wasn't it? Chocolate sales went up by like £40 million. I mean, how is that looking after our health? And alcohol, and how many people put on loads and loads of weight during the pandemic that they're trying to lose? I'm not judging this. I understand that, you know, crisis strikes and people sometimes have no outlet to be able to manage that, although that is something, that's one of the ways we're trying to change the world, by giving people tools for emotional resilience so that they don't need to rely on crutches like alcohol, food, those kind of things. So chocolate sales went up. So sugar, we know, is one of the best ways to crashing out your immune system and upsetting your gut microbiome. So,
which is a big connector with the immune system. I think one of my biggest bugbears was Dunkin' Donuts did a promotion for vaccinated people to get free donuts. I was like, the world's gone mad.
Yeah.
It's such a misunderstanding of how the body works.
Yeah, absolutely.
What my body needs here is donuts.
Yeah. So eating nutrient-dense food, getting out in nature, moving our bodies, getting enough sleep, working really, really hard to keep fear out of our immediate experience. So what I mean by that is, like, I will do a Google search on, you know, what's going on in the world of COVID, and so I keep abreast of the information, and also because I am fascinated. When you start watching the narrative about a week before something's about to change, you can see it. Could, should, oh no, there'll be a denial to begin with. No, this isn't going to happen. And then it'll be a couple of days later, well, we're not ruling it out. Then it might be a, well, it could happen. And then it's a, oh, by the way, this is happening. So you can just see, it's actually fascinating to watch from actually theatrically. It's utterly incredible to watch the process. The marketing spin is quite fascinating if you're not sort of sucked into it. So I keep abreast, but I don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news for coming up, God, nearly 20 years now. I don't watch the news because I don't listen to a radio. I am very careful about how I curate my environment for my own mental health, and because I want to be focusing on my work, my mental health. I want to be focusing on, like, the immediate things in my life that I can actually do something about. One of my favorite, it is a prayer. I am non-religious, I'm deeply spiritual, but one of my favorite prayers is grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that for me is, it's like, I focus on the things I can change and I can affect, and I observe the things that I can't change and have to be very, very careful on learning what the difference is. So so those things, moving your body is a really, really big one. And especially as we're now going back into winter, people aren't sort of spending so much time outdoors, but also we had a bit of a sort of a rubbishy summer. You wouldn't know about that being in Spain, a bit of a rubbishy summer. So being outdoors, being in nature, all of those things, that's what we mean by looking after ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if someone's interested in doing this for themselves, do we have anything that we can offer?
Yeah, we do. Because I was just thinking, like, why did we ended up making the decisions that we make? Because we make the decisions that we make because I think you and I have been on such a big health journey, and ultimately we have been lied to by the medical profession, lied to by the alternative health profession.
I think that's really important.
Really important.
We honestly, the alternative health industry.
Oh my God, didn't you have someone literally say to you, you're so toxic? I mean, what language to use with someone? I would just, oh my gosh. We're so clear with our students about how to use empowering language, not, you know, judgmental or diagnostic language. It's so important.
And we're so clear in our training as well. One of the other experiences that I've had with alternative health is that judgment and sometimes diagnosis can come from an alternative health practitioner. And that's shocking because that is not what we do. Absolutely, we do not go anywhere near diagnosis or claiming that we can cure or heal. If you come across an alternative health practitioner that starts using that language, they are red flags.
Yeah, 100%. Support, manage,
educate.
Yeah, exactly. And, starting to put together some of the dots, like, okay, so you were unwell then, you'd done this then, have you considered there's a connection? So one of the reasons that we question everything, I mean, it's just, honestly, it's probably going to be my epitaph, questioned everything. My mum said I was a really demanding child. So just wanted to know why to everything. And it is something that I have brought through every career, and when I was younger, the fear of asking what I considered a stupid question, that must be such a basic question that no one else is asking it. And actually, that is fundamentally how we have created the courses that we've created, because we ask the questions that no one else is asking. So question everything. I was in the doctor's surgery with my daughter the other day, and she needed she just registered back with the doctor, having been at a different one, and that it sort of came up with a load of vaccines that she hadn't had. That wasn't actually true. She had some of them, but she'd had them at the other doctor's surgery. And there was things like sort of MMR booster, and there was HPV, and there was school leavers, some meningitis, because she'd gone for this tetanus vaccine. And so I was like, oh gosh, okay, well, some of those I know she's had, and we were able to get those, records and send them over. But actually, she had a massive reaction to MMR so she never had the booster. And she has been programmed since she was a tiny, tiny child. If you feel unwell, the first thing you tell someone is, I didn't have my booster. She had a massive reaction, like her immune system has never been the same since. And it was literally like days afterwards. And when they were telling her, okay, well, you need your HPV, and she's like, I've looked into that one. That's about safe sex. That's in it. And as far as I'm concerned, education piece. That's not a necessary vaccine. That's an education piece. And if we struggle to put those boundaries in place, let's look at our self-love. Let's look at why I'm struggling to have the courage to say to someone, I'm only going to practice safe sex. Like these are the questions around some of these vaccines that I would be bringing, these stupid questions. Meningitis, yeah, you're having that one. And here's why. Have that one. DPT, yep, there you go. You missed out on that one because when she left school, it was middle of COVID. So it wasn't that she'd missed them on purpose. It's just because of, a few gaps. So it's asking the questions. Be brave to ask the questions. And if the courage isn't forthcoming, then I am curious from a place of boundaries, good girl syndrome, or, not rocking the boat, people pleasing, caretaking. I've had this because I'm worried about my family or what my family will say. All of this autonomy that we're missing. And we're looking for someone to be the grown-up to tell us what to do. And so actually currently that's Boris Johnson. And I'm sorry, but no.
It's not my grown-up.
Not my grown-up. And I'm not going to turn this into a political rant.
Is he anyone's grown-up?
I'm not going to turn this into a political rant. I am going to say, though, in his defense, I think he's been very, very busy since he took over, what with a new child as well.
Got a lot to do.
Quite a bit on, hasn't he?
Overwhelmed.
So it's, if you're looking for someone outside of you to make this decision for you, then that says to me there is an opportunity for some self-work, to find your own autonomy. This isn't about being belligerent. It's not about making life difficult for other people. It's not about putting other people at risk. It's about exactly the way that you said it. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it responsibly. How do I do this responsibly?
Yeah. I know the first 2 days that I had COVID and I was pretty unwell and I had my fever and I was like, wow, okay. So here we go. Right. I have made this adult decision. I've made this choice, and I've chosen to be as self-responsible as I can and protect others. And now it's about my process, about making and wrangling with the decision that I have made, because I chose not to be vaccinated. And now here I am. And that was an emotional piece for me. And how do I hold myself through it? Now, I was told after I came through COVID, oh, wasn't it lucky that you had the response that you did? I mean, I had 2 days that were pretty rough, and then it turned into a cold. I also think that I have spent 15 years investing in my health, investing in my not having to panic in those moments, because panic would have absolutely floored my immune system even more. So how do I hold myself in that moment of, oh, okay, so this global virus that we have been told repeatedly is a killer, and it is. I have it. How do I work through this? And so, yeah, I didn't see it as luck. I saw it more as, yeah, no, I've prepared 15 years for this.
I prepared for this.
I prepared
for this. And I'm going to be honest, my partner went down with it. And really annoyingly, on day 9 of our quarantine, so we had to quarantine for 20 days, he was like, I probably won't get it. And then didn't, out of his belligerence, and then got it on day 9. And he said as well, we both noticed that for quite a lot of it, I didn't feel that unwell, but I rested more than I probably would have done if it had been a cold or something else, because I was aware that this could have the potential around day 8, day 9 of switching into something significantly worse. So guess what? That's what the fear, not even fear, informed decision making led to for me was, I'm just going to be extra careful with my self-care.
Yeah, me too.
Extra careful. Whereas once I might push through, just have that, Zoom meeting or whatever. So there is beauty. I'm also just going to say that I did see one article in the BBC, and I'd be interested to see if you can still find it, actually, because I know that a lot of times something's been reported and then it's been taken down. It's like it's been reported for the sake of non-biased reporting, and then it's been taken down. But there was an article that said, if you have a humdinger of an infection, you are more likely to have, so we know this from other flus, you are more likely to have immunity against the variety of variants that come your way. If you have a mild case, you might not. If you have a humdinger of an infection, you are more likely to have immunization against the other variants that come your way. So those people technically should be the golden gooses in terms of herd immunity. Like we should be, we should be licking them.
Who's licking me?
Hi. I'm gonna just lick your arm.
It was a wonderful article, wasn't it? Because it really put the debate forward about booster vaccines. So I wonder if you can still get it.
Yeah. And here we are, that actually people who are having the double vaccination, then getting unwell, great. Now you've got proper immunity. So why need the vaccine? Why do you need the booster if you've got it anyway? I'm not making any recommendations there. My recommendation is you do the research and you come to the decision for yourself, because exactly like you're saying, Laura, there comes that moment of reckoning of, this was the decision that I made, and now whichever way this goes, I have got to be able to
live with this,
or not, or die with it. Live with it or die with it.
Absolutely. So if anybody listening is interested in supporting their own health, we have developed a symptomassessor.co.uk, which is our gorgeous little questionnaire which looks at where your health is and then gives you recommendations on what to focus on if you want to get your health in the best possible place. And if you are just fascinated with health and nutrition and just want to get deeper into this, we, as part of the college, we run courses. So we've got the nutrition side, which is our Nutrition for Health course. We also have more of the emotional side, which is our foundation coaching skills, which is also a holding space. And then we've also got our kinesiology training. So check out the college, the functionalkinesiology.co.uk or functional-wellness.co.uk.
And if you feel like, a lot of this has been about, I can't find my autonomy. So I am so scared that I'm just going along with what's recommended without having the autonomy, then I would really be looking at emotional transformation work. Yeah. And that's also something we do. We have online programs in emotional work to help you find your own autonomy, to be able to live with the decisions you make without regret, without remorse, without guilt. As in that very, I'm going to be my own grown-up, thanks. I'm going to be my own adult. I'm going to make the decisions for me that are right for me, because I've been able to do the research, because I've been able to make that calculated risk decision for myself. This, for me, is why one of the reasons that we've kept quiet is because actually we never really wanted to talk about COVID. We have so many things that we want to talk about the digestion and the immune system and adrenal fatigue and this, that, and the other. We were like, well, when's all this going to blow over so we can get back to talking about what we want to talk about?
It's also because just watching it play out.
Yeah.
So we wanted to really watch it, do the research, get our own perspectives, get really clear on what we wanted to communicate before we started communicating.
And I'm just gonna want to finish off by saying, question everything repeatedly. I can't even tell you how many times Laura and I have changed our position on something because that we have taught, that we have believed, because new research has emerged.
Open-minded. Just keep that open mind. As soon as we get to that place where it's just like, no, it's this way and there is no other way, we miss the opportunity.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. We really do. But question everything. Question why we're still seeing spikes and everyone's supposed to be vaccinated. And Israel, that had mandatory vaccines, are now in the middle of, having a terrible time. Question everything. My partner always says, if they're trying to get you to look over here, where are they not trying to get you to look? Question everything. Who's making the money out of this? Just question everything to find your own path, not to be a conspiracy theorist. Just gonna say it again, not an anti-vaxxer. I'm gonna have a badge, not an anti-vaxxer. Medical freedom. Yeah, exactly. But so that you're questioning everything so that you can find the truth for you, because everyone's is different.
And on that note,
yeah, the more that we can have the tolerance for that, then we actually get to move together, work together. The world's a much more beautiful place.
Amen.
Great. Thank you all for your comments. And if you have any queries, get in touch.